Hello and welcome back to Not Overthinking. Taimur, how are you doing this week?
Mate, knackered. I just woke up. What's time? It's 8 a.m. over here. I'm in a place called North Macedonia. I got here yesterday, and I'm here until tomorrow night.
What's the deal with North Macedonia?
I'm not too sure. I'm trying to learn a bit about the history of the place. I think I think Alexander the Great is supposed to have been from this region. There's very old Soviet vibes going on. It's kind of. Wait, let me see. Is it in the Balkans?
Where is it on Google Maps? North Macedonia. Oh, it's sort of just above Greece.
Yeah, it's in that kind of region, Southeast Europe.
Next to Albania and Bulgaria and Kosovo.
Yeah, exactly. It has similar vibes.
Why did you go to North Macedonia of all places?
We're doing a little lads trip. We wanted to go somewhere with a sort of big Muslim population. And so this was on the list. I think apparently officially about a third of the population is Muslim, but some taxi driver or something said that it's actually closer to a half. It's a lot of undocumented people or something.
Oh, cool.
So this was on the short list. I think Bosnia was on the short list. A few other places like that. But here we are. So I got here yesterday at 4 a.m. and we're just going to do some day trip type things. So that's me. How was your week going?
Been pretty good. Looking at my calendar, what have I done this week? Oh yeah, I was on a team retreat in Wales.
Oh, nice.
From Sunday through to Thursday, which was sick. And I set myself a challenge that every day I was going to write out one whole chapter of my book. And I managed it. It was good.
Really?
Yeah.
One chapter a day?
The crappy first draft, at least, of one chapter a day for 4 days.
Wait, can you give a status update on the book? Because I thought you already had almost basically written the whole book at this point.
No. So I had written about half the book at this point,
okay.
And then we sort of ended up revising a lot of things in terms of just the outline. And that ended up changing a bunch of bits when we got a new editor in, and she was like, yeah, the stuff you've written, some of it is good, most of it's a bit crap, so we need to scrap most of it and start again.
So you're not doing the pilot plane engineer thing?
No, that went out of the window about a year ago.
Are you doing the make it fun thing? Is that the...
No, that was then the next thing, which I started writing about, and that went out the window as well.
So what's the latest thing?
The latest thing is that the secret to sustainable productivity is to harness energy from your work, find a way to make it energizing rather than completely draining. And if you can do that, you'll be more productive at doing it. But also, you'll have way more energy to give to the things that really matter to you.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that sounds sensible. But to me, these all sound like decent ideas. It doesn't, the last one doesn't sound terrible. Surely you could keep rehashing this for, till Kingdom Come. What do you just think the editor really knows what they're talking about or something?
Yeah, at some point you have to kind of basically set it in stone and be like, right, this is how it's going to go down. The difficulty is that with a book like this, it's really all about the framing. The material is never going to be novel. There's nothing ever that's novel in some of these books. But
I agree. What makes to the untrained eye like mine, this framing does not seem drastically better than the previous framing. They would seem decent.
Yeah, I think Make It Fun would have worked. The issue with Make It Fun is that it's not a particularly defensible thesis, and in the eyes of everyone who looked at it, anyone who all of the editors and agent and stuff, they were just yeah, this Make It Fun thing is okay, I see what you're saying, but it's also not true. Not everything can be fun. It's just way too easy to poke holes into the argument.
Yeah.
And as I was writing it and I got through halfway through the book, I also realized, okay, this thesis does not work. So you have to rewind, figure out what the thesis is, and then rejig all the content to fit the new one.
Yeah.
What's going on with that? So I've done the crappy first drafts of chapters 1 through 6. I've got chapter 7, 8, 9. So in theory, today and tomorrow is my on my to-do list is to finish chapter 7, the rough first draft.
So do you think this framing is the one?
I think so. I think I still need to figure out the best phraseology for it. Because if someone asks, "What's the book about?" It's it's a book about
productivity.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a book about productivity. I'd say it's a book about how to do more of the things that really matter to you, in a way that's fun and more sustainable. Or it's a book about how to it's a book that'll help you do more of what really matters to you in a way that's fun and sustainable.
Okay, yeah.
It's like that's the result that people are going to get from reading the book, hopefully. And then the method is like, oh, how'd you do that? Well, really, the secret is that you want to figure out what energizes you. And turns out if you, whatever. I actually did a podcast interview with Will MacAskill of Effective Altruism.
Yeah, how was that?
Today. It was sick. So good.
Yeah.
It's coming out sometime in August on the deep dive. And what he said, we ended up devolving into book chat after lots of altruism and long-termism chat. Is that really it's like 50% of the value of the book is in that one story that you tell about the book.
What?
Like no one remembers, oh, there's 3 Ps, power, play, and people, or whatever. Like no one remembers that, but people remember, oh, Ali Abdaal, that book about like sustainable productivity. Oh, it's that story. So he was like, you got to figure out that story. And I think I have. As I say this, I think I have the story. The story is that back in the day when I was working as a doctor, to use just to still harp on that one, there'd be some days where I'd get home from the end of the day of work feeling completely drained and like I don't have the energy to do anything at all.
Yeah.
But there would be other days where I'd get home completely, at the end of the day, like super, super energized, and I'd be ready to crank out like YouTube videos or like work on my blog or like podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
And the thing that I asked myself was, what is the difference between those 2 days? What is it that makes some days and some work really draining, and what is it that makes other work really energizing? Even though like on the surface I was kind of doing the same thing most days.
Yeah.
And doing that made me realize that actually there's some things that reliably, when they're in my day, they make it way more energizing. And then when a publisher came to me and asked me, hey, do you want to write a book about, your secret to productivity? I was like, hang on, is there something here? And we dove into all the research and shit and found that actually these things that make work energizing for me also make work energizing for most people. And there's like a whole evidence base behind it. Yeah. And it all relates to the power, like the idea of motivation and willpower and like what are the things that drive intrinsic motivation. And that is what the book is about, or something like that.
Yeah, I like that story. That's a nice story. I think it's very relatable. On the topic of intrinsic motivation, I've started to see some folks on twitter.com say that it doesn't really exist. Have you started to, are you aware of the...
I'm not on the bleeding edge of twitter.com.
Yeah, there's some folks that I follow. Are you familiar with the Montessori method and Maria Montessori?
Yes, I'm not familiar with it, but I've come across it. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so on Montessori Twitter, some people are anti-intrinsic motivation and don't really think it exists. Let me find...
I've just Googled it. Montessori approach to building... Montessori is built on intrinsic motivation.
Well.
Is this why I need a second brain rather than Google?
But yeah, it's basically this kind of, educational philosophy by this woman called Maria Montessori. And we actually went to a Montessori school when we were younger, by the way.
One in the city.
Yeah. There's a guy called Matt Bateman on Twitter. Great follow. M Bateman, MBATEMAN. He recently, he claims that extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation is a trap. External rewards can be good. Internal motives aren't always worthy ones. More importantly, in real cases, the distinction collapses. Healthy motivation involves integrating processes and effects in oneself and the world.
Wait, can you link me that tweet?
Yeah, his wife is currently working on a blog post, or an essay rather, called "There's No Such Thing as Intrinsic Motivation." So maybe we'll have to wait for that one to drop. But I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of as you've described it, the bleeding edge of Twitter.com.
This is interesting.
Yeah, I think you should definitely follow this guy. This guy will be very relevant to your book and stuff.
Okay, I'll drop him a DM and be like, "Hey, do you want to hop on a call?"
Yeah, dude. Yeah, if you get on call with this guy, just talk about like intrinsic, extrinsic motivation. I think he'll be able to like.
Sick.
Yeah, because basically it's like no one is questioning it, right? Like this extrinsic, intrinsic motivation thing. It's such a meme, and like it seems so convincing. Like I'm bought into it. Like I don't know what these guys are going to say against it, but I'm like super bought into it. I think it's like one of the most useful like hashtag mental models of all time. Like, it's just like this incredible concept that like changes your life once you just hear the words. It's like such a huge thing. And there are some sophisticated naysayers, which I think is always interesting. Ooh. So yeah, I reckon you should chat to Matt Bateman.
Excellent. Yeah, in the book, our thesis is that it's not as simple as intrinsic versus extrinsic.
Oh man, great. Yeah.
There are occasions in which rewards and punishments are in fact helpful.
Okay.
If used appropriately and used with the appropriate warning label attached.
Great.
And yeah, I need to read Alfie Kohn's Punished by Rewards as well, just to see what the child psychology vibe is on this front.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting. So that's the book. That's what the book is about. And interview with Will went swimmingly. I think we talked for about 4.5 hours, which was a bit excessive, I think, for him. But he said afterwards he could have gone on for longer.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I've decided that I need to...
How long is the podcast?
I need to... probably, I don't know, maybe 4 hours, 3.5 hours. And I've decided I need to orient my career around impact. When I came home and told Lucia, she was like, dude, I've been telling you this for 5 years.
What was I mean, is this just like a recency bias of like, you've just chatted to Will MacAskill for 4 hours and now you're hyped about impact, and then like tomorrow you can like not care anymore?
Yeah, I think that is definitely a part of it, which is why I need to figure out a framing, an internally consistent argument in my mind for why this is the thing that I care about, or why I should care about this thing, and then hope that argument is resistant to the external pressures to care about things.
You've been through this, right? Like when you had I feel like when you had Lucia on your YouTube video a few years ago. Talking about like effective altruism and like you took the pledge and all this stuff. Yeah. I feel like you had a similar like realization then of like, oh my god, I've got to like reorient my life towards this.
I don't think I did.
I've got to find an logically coherent thing that you said the same shit, dude.
I don't think I did.
No, you weren't like energized to do it.
No, when I took the pledge, it was like, great, I'll take the pledge and then I'll stop thinking about it.
Oh, okay. Like, what did Will say to make you care more about impact now?
Honestly, I think that really I have sort of been feeling a bit of a sense of purposelessness is too strong a word, but like along that axis, because I feel like beyond this book as a sort of fairly proximal project to be working on, I don't really have something that I'm striving for. In the sense that, like, we're when doing our business planning, we've been thinking like, well, what is our 10-year goal? And for me, the 10-year goal was just like, look, just want to be a profitable business that helps people while having fun.
Yeah.
And we are already a profitable business that helps people while having fun. And so there was something about the lifestyle business goal that was like, yeah, I don't really care about goals. I don't need to make more money. I'm just very happy sustaining what we've got right now and just making sure I'm doing the things I enjoy and kind of helping people in the ways I want to, i.e. teaching.
Yep.
And that's all well and good. But it's also meant that, like, for example, 3-year plan, we have all these like metrics that like it would be cool to hit. And we have a 1-year plan and we have like the stuff. And it's like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is aimed at, I guess, growing the business through creating content.
Yeah.
And the problem is that there's no real good reason to do it, because it's like the bigger the business gets, the more faff it becomes. Yes, I'll probably make more money, but like that money is at lower margins because then we have a higher headcount. It's just more faff. Also, why do I need more money? It's all like, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Whereas, and when I spoke to Mo Gaudat, who's the author of Solve for Happy on the podcast, and he and I had breakfast a couple weeks ago as well, he was like chief business officer of Google X for ages. And like, I'm imagining like stupidly rich. But then he had this tragic thing that happened, that his son, who was 16 years old, died in this surgical mistake thing for an appendectomy. And Mo decided to sort of reorient his life around trying to help people become happier. Like, kind of, because his son Ali was always the source of joy and happiness in the world. And so he had this mission for him and his team, 1 billion people happier. And he and I talked about that when he was on my pod. And he said that having a goal like that, like a service-oriented goal, really is it. That's like the only thing that drives him now, because he doesn't care about money and status and all that crap. Beyond a certain point, it's just becomes totally meaningless. So he said that orienting his life around that has given him purpose. And similarly, I was chatting to Will about this, and I mentioned that, like, I'm actually not really sure what to do with the business, because, we're operating at 60% margins. That just seems, overly high. And the only reason our margins are that high is because I feel this need for a financial safety net. And he was like, yeah, that's really bad. Or he was like, that seems extremely suboptimal. Because right now it's almost like, I think in Lucia's case, if you're a nonprofit that has too much money, you actually don't have the ability to suitably deploy that capital. And so what do you do with money? You probably just like stick it in the S&P or donate it or whatever. So Will was saying that, like, you've got this excess cash in the bank. You could stick it in the S&P, which would net you 5%. You could donate it, which would net you probably a little bit more than that. But if given you can probably have more impact through actually using that money to spread the message of EA, for example, or spread the message of helping people figure out what to do with their careers and how to lean towards a career that's meaningful and impactful and fulfilling and all that stuff. Yeah. And in a way, that would mean that we should be spending that money and more on reaching more people, because 3 million subscribers right now. What's the in my current worldview? What is the difference between 3 million and 6 million? Basically nothing. It just ramps up the pressure, and it just means I make a little bit more money. It probably won't scale to 2x, and really won't scale my own personal happiness or well-being or anything like that. But if you have an impact goal, and suddenly the thing that you care about is like, I want to help more people in the world figure out a career that's meaningful and impactful, or change the trajectory of their life towards something that does good. Yeah. Suddenly, 6 million is way better than 3 million.
It's like twice as good. Yeah.
And it means that, we were sort of vaguely toying with the idea of like, in a hypothetical future where that was the goal, there would even be foundations and stuff that we might be able to measure our impact in terms of number of people who have been turned on to this movement. And there might be foundations who'd be like, you know what, we're just going to fund you. So you just keep doing more of this thing. And thinking about that, I've been mulling it over for the last day, how like it would be cool to have some sort of impact goal of some sort. It would just be cool. So I just need to chat to various people and figure out what said goal actually is. Because currently I don't really have
Here's the thing, like, for years you've been saying that, like, your goal is to, like, make people happier and healthier and more productive or something, right? Like,
help people live their best life.
Yeah, you've always claimed to have this angle. So, like, what's different this time? Like what is new, bruv? Like, you've always claimed to care about this.
I think what's new is, like, this is still the thing I care about, and what I need to do is basically find a goal to strive for that is somewhat measurable in terms of this thing of helping people live their best life. And so, like, when I was speaking at the Oxford Union a couple of weeks ago, one of the people in the audience asked the question of, where was I going with this? Helping people live their best life, purpose. Oh yeah, one of the people asked the question of, do you feel bad that you, like, even if, like, you might have encouraged some small percentage of people to leave medical school or not apply to medical school or drop out of medicine to pursue other things? Do you not feel bad about the impact that has on the healthcare system? And I was thinking about this a lot, and my response at the time, which I still buy, is that the UK healthcare system has enough doctors and currently cannot actually even cope with the supply of doctors, in that there are 1,000+ people that didn't get a place for jobs, but whatever. Yeah. But more on the side is, like, if I can encourage people to actually do the thing that they find personally meaningful and fulfilling and drives them, then I think the net impact on the world is way higher than if those same people didn't realize that they actually are not a good fit for medicine and end up doing it and hating it and hating their lives. Yeah. And I was chatting to our mutual friend Evie last night, who is a podcast listener, whose life was essentially changed by the podcast when she discovered Lucia. And
one of many. Yeah,
exactly. That's why we should be more consistent with it. She discovered Lucia, and she was saying last night that, like, you've probably changed the trajectory of my life, because her discovering Lucia led to her discovering the EA movement, led to her, like, suddenly going all in on this thing. And it's like, that's the kind of impact that I really like, where if I imagine the impact that someone like Optimal Minimal, Tim Ferriss, had on me, his book just completely changed the trajectory of my life. Yeah. And I want to be able to have that sort of impact on people. And so that's like has been the vague thought that's in my mind. But I think having,
But like this has been in your mind for years, mate. Like there's nothing new here.
I think the thing that's new here is that basically putting a number on it, putting a clear, like, what does this actually look like? Is there a way that we can measure this in a way that that creates almost a funding gap? That's like, okay, cool. We have this goal that we're working towards. We're like, oh, wow, we're nowhere near there. We should deploy the capital in the business to working towards that thing.
Okay, yeah.
As opposed to, we want to help people live their best lives, which we're already doing, want to be profitable and have fun, which we're already doing. So it's like, what's the point of running the business? It's like, oh, to maintain the status quo, to continue having a nice lifestyle. It's like, at some point, the goal of, I want my life to be chill and easy and fun is just not particularly motivating.
Yeah.
At some point, the goal of, I want to make more money so that I can just stick more in the S&P 500 or in crypto is not particularly motivating.
Especially not now, mate.
Especially not now. I mean, it's on sale though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think...
Do you think if you come up with
a
number, that'll be motivating for you?
I think so. I mean, I have this hypothesis that it would, and I suspect it would be very motivating for the team as well.
I buy that it would be motivating for the team. I'm not that convinced it's going to be motivating for you, man.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's a bit of a hypothesis. All about experimentation.
I think basically, right, like, you'll disagree with this maybe because of your whole, like, motivation is a myth thing. I don't know where you stand on that these days. But I think, like, when you truly care about a particular goal, the number itself is, like, less relevant. The number itself is like, secondary. And, like, you know, it helps you, like, it kind of micro guides you, right? But, like, it is secondary, you know? Like, without the number, you'd be, like, pretty roughly oriented towards that thing anyway. Like, when you're thinking about what's motivating, it's not the number, it's just, like, the thing.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Right?
It's
so, like, you can't...
Clarity.
My view is basically that nothing underlying has changed. Like, yeah, to some degree, you care about helping people, you know, live their best lives. That, you know, you've cared about that for the past few years. This conversation yesterday hasn't really changed how much you care about that. And, like, if you just find some number, some way to quantify it, like, it's not going to, like, magically change, like, how you actually feel about these things.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's about the number. I think it's about the clarity of the goal, because helping people live their best life is not a particularly clear thing. And I've always been like, oh, I want to be a teacher. But the question I was thinking about last night is, a teacher of what? Like, what is the thing that I want to teach? Other than, and previously my thing has always been like, I just like learning cool things and then like teaching the cool things. Which is, again, fine. But I think there's one more step along that path of figuring out, like, okay, then, and what is the thing that I want to teach? And I think broadly it comes down to, you know, helping people live a bit more intentionally, to be more intentional with their decisions en route to living a best life, or something to that effect. But I think, yeah, there's like one or two more steps to go in figuring out what that goal specifically is, rather than just the general vague notion of, like, I want to be a teacher and I want to help people live their best life. I think we'll see.
Yeah, I think you do care a lot about helping people make better career decisions broadly, like, around helping people, like, understand all the options for the broad strokes of their life and, like, pick the right one for them, kind of thing. It does feel like you care about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think help people make better decisions with their career and with their life, or something like that might be the one.
So, like, what was it about the conversation with Will yesterday? It seems like what did he say exactly to get you on this? Or it seems like more of an internal thing of, like, you know, this seems a bit, like, meaningless. Like, what am I doing kind of vibes?
Yeah, I've sort of had the bit meaningless kind of vibes for the last few months since I've, you know, really started to think about what I actually want to do with my career. Because I think, like, in the early days of the YouTube stuff, and even up until probably this time last year, actually, no, maybe only about 6 months ago, like, it's only been in the last sort of 6 to 12 months that our revenues have just been ridiculous thanks to the YouTuber Academy. And it's, like, kind of weird that half of our business is dependent on this random course that we just sort of came up with the idea for, that really has very little to do with the actual videos that we're making. And so this has been making me think a lot about, you know, doing the calculations, going on causal, figuring out, like, you know, working with a financial advisor, figuring out how much money do I really need to be financially independent, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, cool. we're good. And just me being a bit more comfortable with uncertainty of like, I don't know if I'm 50 years from now, I'm still going to be making YouTube videos, but I'm sure I'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Which means that it's like, all right, cool. Now the thing that's driving me is no longer the need for a financial safety net. And therefore, what is the thing that's driving me?
Yeah.
So that's been an internal thing over the last like 6-9 months-ish. And talking to Will, made me realize that, oh crap, the world is potentially in a bit of a bad state. And we can do something about it. Because I've never really fully engaged with that kind of stuff. Like I've never seen any of the documentaries about like why meat is bad, or like I know that they exist, but I've never bothered engaging with that side of the world particularly. Beyond hearing about them.
I'm sure you've heard Lucia talk about this stuff many times.
See, sometimes yes, but like she's not that hard. Like she's not that like hit you on the head with it. I think she's kind of like lead a horse to water and allow it to drink. And so she has led me to the water, and I have never yet drunk. Yeah. So it's like genuinely, I didn't have an appreciation for, oh crap, these things are actually important. Especially Will's stuff about long-termism, which obviously he was very convincing about it. And I need to read his book more closely and a bunch of other stuff. So I think the missing piece was, in a way, me just not really appreciating that, hang on, there are problems in the world and I can do something about them. Or rather that there are problems in the world and we should collectively do something about them, and therefore I can do something about them, and here is the way that I can have impact. It's just like that causal chain. I just haven't really kind of made it legible in my mind. And then the other thing with Will is just like, I think it's one of those things like when you meet someone who you look up to, you know, he's like ridiculously successful by all metrics. It's like, you know, if my career trajectory of like putting stuff out in the world and writing books that are sick and being on podcasts that are sick, and like, you know, he talked Sam Harris into taking the pledge, and Sam Harris now talks about effective altruism with loads of people. Will's talk at MIT 10 years ago or 15 years ago was where a chap called Sam decided, oh my gosh, I need to do Earn to Give, and joined Jane Street and then set up FTX.com and has now set up a foundation. It's like he's now like the richest person in the world under the age of 35. And is giving hundreds of millions to charity and effective causes. It's like that impact is super inspiring. And I think sort of speaking to him and hearing about that firsthand kind of made me think, oh, this is a guy who is sort of like me, who has done a thing that is really cool, that I also think is really cool by my own kind of external metrics of like, this guy's sick. And he seems to be living off of 27K a year and donating all the rest of it and sort of giving his life towards this cause of impact. That's sick. That's really cool. And I think there's something about speaking to someone that like, yeah, just how I think Evie really vibed with the way that Lucia approaches life, that, oh wow, there's this girl who's like orienting her life towards impact and dropped out of being a doctor to pursue a charity thing. That's amazing. That's so sick. It's like, I think that is sort of the feeling I had with Will, that like, oh wow, this guy is like really cool and oriented his life towards impact, and that's sick. Yeah. And therefore I could do that too. And I think what it takes is speaking to someone that you look up to in that way, because like, you know, we've spoken to people like Neil and Joey who are also big into this stuff. Yeah. But it's like, I don't,
they're not relatable for you.
They're not, they're relatable for me in the sense that like, I think they are my peers. Whereas someone like Will MacAskill is someone who I view as aspirational rather than quote, just a peer.
Yeah.
And so I think similar to, for example, you know, someone like Tim Ferriss or Sam Harris or whatever, these guys are not peers. They are like aspirational. They're like a level above. And there's something about that is very inspiring if you vibe with that kind of lifestyle and that kind of mission, to think, yeah, I could do this as well.
Yeah.
I'm actually tearing up a bit thinking about this. It's weird. What the fuck?
Oh, I wish the video quality was better. I can't really see all this.
Me through my little 1080p webcam.
Wait, so like, you said a lot of things there, some of which were like quite different. It seems like.
So you asked what changed when I spoke to Will. And I said two things. Number one, that I just sort of over the course of 4 hours was convinced that the world has problems that people should solve, and I can do something about it as well, which is one. And number two is sort of the relatability and aspirationality of the guy that I was speaking to. It's like if you travel the world, if you know, the idea of traveling the world in the abstract seems very like, oh, that seems cool to a bunch of people, including me. But if you speak to someone for 4.5 hours who you look up to, who for example, if I were to speak to Tim Ferriss or Rolf Potts or someone, and they would be like, God, by the way, traveling the world is absolutely sick. It's like changed my life in all these ways, and like, consider traveling the world. I'd be like, right, damn. Now I have a person who I can see has done the thing and how it's affected their life. And now traveling the world to me is no longer an abstract concept.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think I'm going to predict that. I feel like we've been here before, basically, many times. I feel like, okay, aside from the fact that you talked to Will MacAskill in particular about it yesterday, I feel like probably every 3 to 6 months we have some kind of conversation where you're like, Taim, what's the point of this thing? Like, yeah, the business is doing well, but like, you know, what am I really doing this for? I'm really trying to, you know what, Taim, this week I did an exercise with my coach about really trying to figure out what motivates me. What are my goals, you know? And every 3 to 6 months, this conversation happens. I've heard you have this exact conversation with like, you know, millions of people, you know, this, you know, it feels like you've been trying to understand this for the past like 3 to 4 years. And this time you talk to Will MacAskill, but like, it's hard for me to see why this time is any different. Do you agree that like, this pattern of thinking of like, why am I really doing this? And then, you know, maybe like 3 years ago, you concluded the thing about like, Taim, you know what? I found it. I found my mission. It is helping people live happier, healthier, more productive lives. You know, like this has happened a bunch of times basically. And it doesn't feel like this is going to be any different. It feels like fundamentally the things that you care about have not changed. You had a chat with Will MacAskill. A big part of his appeal to you, based on what you said, seems to be that he's written some sick books and been on some sick podcasts. And that's like a big part of like the appeal of why you look up to him. And it seems like just nothing's going to change, man. Like there's nothing new here.
I mean, the question of what am I doing here?
It's a lifelong quest.
It's something that we could all do with thinking about every 3 to 6 months. Some might even say every quarter one should revisit the question of why am I here? What am I doing here? Are the things that I'm working towards in alignment with the person that I want to be? What is the sort of impact that I want to have on the world or on the people around me or in whatever way? And are my actions aligned with that impact? I think it's useful to check in with yourself because, you know, the world
I think
incentivized to make us want to chase more in the sense of, you know what, a trip to North Macedonia with the lads is really what's going to make me happy. The world is incentivized to make us want to be like, you know what, this apartment is kind of nice, but like there's an even nicer one around the corner. And if you don't question this stuff from time to time, you end up living a life that is effectively, you know, as I think Aristotle or someone said, you know, the uncontemplated life, basically not
unexamined life, yeah.
Unexamined life, yeah. It's like, you know, I don't want to live an unexamined life. I enjoy examining the things. And so when I speak to someone, so I think you're right with Will on the two counts. He's written sick books and he's been on sick podcasts, which is what I aspire to do. But also he's had sick impact. Like he has changed the trajectory of people's lives in a way that's helped them be more intentional with what they're doing and also orient their lives more towards actually having sort of impact in the world.
Okay, I guess what I'm actually saying is like, yes, fine. You know, obviously I don't disagree that every quarter you should examine your life and see like, you know, whether you still care about the same things and so on. I feel like it will take a more fundamental shift because like, I don't think the stuff that you've cared about, I mean, the past like 3 years of examining your life every, you know, 2 to 3 months, I don't think the stuff that you care about has like really changed that much. Like, you know, I think, and yeah, I feel like, I guess my point is, I feel like this is not like the sort of the halo effect of meeting someone cool. And it's like when you're, you know, when I was like, you know, 12 years old and I watched Pirates of the Caribbean, I was like, man, I want to be like Jack Sparrow. He's so cool, man. And like for the next couple of days, I was like, you know, channeling Jack Sparrow.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's not going to lead to like any actual change. I think, and like, I think you having this, I think basically your method of examining your life is actually not actually geared towards, you know, examining it or like reaching some new conclusion. Basically, I think the method is like having conversations like this with me and with other people, and then you're probably going to conclude the same. I think it needs something bigger, man. I think you need to either have a transformative life experience, like it seems like that chap had, or you need to like do something radically different, of like going on some vision quest or something in the desert or something, something like that. I don't believe that discussing these things. I don't believe that examining these things in this way, where you talk to other like, internet celebrity types, other like a bit entrepreneur types, where everyone's like, we make all this money. Well, what's it for, lads? All right, let's meet up again next month. Like, yeah, I think there needs to be a radical new approach. What do you reckon?
I think, to quote my new friend Will MacAskill, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Oh my god!
I think there are different types of knowing. That there is intellectual knowing, and then there is true knowing, or some might say intellectual knowing, emotional knowing, and therefore true knowing. I think something like this is sort of like basically for you as Pirates of the Caribbean. For me, it was any time I'd watch a Marvel film, I'd be like, afterwards, I'd be like, oh man, I want to get hench. I
didn't know you were a big Marvel guy. Okay.
And for about 2 days, I would be browsing nerdfitness.com and other such things to be like, okay, how do I lose skinny fat? How do I get hench? How much protein do I need? Like, let me figure out my macros. MyFitnessPal, this is the time I'm finally going to start tracking my bloody macros. And I do it for a few days because of the halo effect of seeing Captain America or whatever. And be like, I want to be hench. And then life would get in the way, and I'd forget that I want to do the hinge thing.
Yeah.
So I was saying this to like Evie and Lucia last night. They were like, oh, Evie was asking, do you now identify as an EA? And I was like, no. And she was like, oh damn. And I was like, but the reason is that, and Lucia managed to put this into words because I didn't fully. I was sort of had a garbled explanation. Is that, I mean, until it becomes an internal drive, it's not going to change anything. Right now, I have this thing of like, oh, this guy's cool. I'm now reading the books. But it's like the next step is for me to basically form my own thesis for why I care about this thing. And specifically what that thesis is. So for example, like last night I started reading Animal Liberation by our friend Peter Singer to be like, all right, cool. So that's one thing. I'm going to read Doing Good, Better as well. And I think that the step is to actually immerse myself in the materials to be like, how can I, and that's the thing that's different. It's I've got this extrinsic motivation almost from like seeing a cool guy and being like, I want to be like this guy. Yeah. So now how do I translate that into concrete things? And for me, it's not like I'm never going to be motivated by I want to be the next Will MacAskill or I want to be the next Tim Ferriss, because he's like, that was again somewhat motivational for about a year. It was like, be the next Tim Ferriss, meets Naval Ravikant, meets whatever. But I think immersing myself in that stuff and actually reading the things and figuring out, okay, what is the thing that intellectually I believe to be true about the world that I should do. I actually got this tip from Evie when there was this lady who was on the, I think, 80,000 Hours podcast or something, who helps people figure out what to do with their careers. And she said that like step one is to intellectually find the arguments and decide what you want to care about based on the strength of the intellectual arguments. And once you have done that, step two is to throw yourself into trying to get yourself to intuitively or emotionally care about the thing as much as possible. And so currently I'm on step 0. Going towards step 1 of this sort of this feels like
I think reading the material is good. It feels like over the past few years, the material that you've read to try and figure this out is books about what to do with your life rather than books about anything in particular, right?
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, and so I think like you've got all the mental models already or whatever about like how you might want to think about what to do with your life. And I think immersing yourself in the material of like actual specific things.
Specific calls.
Specific calls. I back it. I think that could be different this time. All right.
So I started reading Animal Liberation, and I'm in the process of being convinced why animals need to be liberated.
Nice.
So that's me, and I've got my new personal trainer starting in 10 minutes time. So he's coming over to the flat.
Nice. Why did you get a new one?
I actually haven't had one for several months. Because initially I was at, it's a bit of a windy story. I was at Virgin Active, and and I had a personal trainer at Virgin Active, and I'd go there like 2 or 3 times a week. It was a lot of faff to go to the actual gym. I was doing it. It was fairly close to the studio, et cetera, et cetera. But then my personal trainer from at Virgin Active basically said, hey, you've got a flat in your gym. Why don't we take this off chain and I'll come and train you at your flat. And I was like, sick, win-win. And he was like, and you can cancel your Virgin Active membership too. And I was like, okay, sure. This sounds like a win because it saves me money and it means I don't have to go to Virgin Active. And then he came to my gym once and then he was kind of like, oh, it's a bit far. The timings don't work out. Like he still has a day job at Virgin Active. So it just wasn't really working. And then I sort of went off.
Leave Virgin Active, I'll come to you. And then he was like, I don't know about that.
Basically, I mean, I could have pushed harder for it, but it's just like the timings didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
And then Gordon, my videographer, became my gym buddy, and we were going to like train together and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think in that context, we were letting perfect be the enemy of good because we were like, oh yeah, it would be so sick to get before. Why is your laptop making noise?
Sorry, it's my calendar apps.
My goodness. Yeah. It would be cool to do this body transformation thing, blah, 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 blah. And we did that for a couple of weeks, and then life got in the way, the calendar got in the way, and coordinating both him and mine where neither of us are getting paid for it. And it's actually quite hard.
There's nothing really like someone getting paid for it to make something happen.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost like, there can only really be one thing in your life that you do every week that you're not getting paid for. That requires two people's calendars, and trying to do that 3 times a week with Jim was becoming unfeasible. And so I was just like, you know what? I just need to get a personal trainer who's fully incentivized where both of us are fully incentivized to help me out.
Yeah.
And if Gordon wants to join for some of the workouts, he can join. But I think we'll make that the cherry on top rather than the core of my health model. Because I was finding as well, I couldn't possibly go to the gym today because Gordon's not around. And that's just be the enemy of the good. So that's the idea. Personal trainer. I think his name's Dougie. No, is it Dougie? I need to find out what his name is. Whatever his name is. He'll be saying hello to me in about 8 minutes' time.
Nice. I back it.
Yeah. What are you up to today?
When do you reckon you'll have finished Animal Liberation?
Don't know. I will. It's my bedtime reading on Kindle.
Oh,
yeah. I think when I have spare time, so it's like when I'm basically not doing the book, this will be the thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
For the next couple of weeks, probably, to immerse myself. And I have a chat on the podcast next month with the other co-founder of 80,000 Hours. His name is Ben, who is another one of these Oxford grad productivity bros who's into altruism and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that will be another sort of touch point to get a speed boost. And there's this person who also works at 80,000 Hours called Habiba, who we're trying to get on the pod to basically, she's like a career coach that helps you sort of work through and figure out what you actually care about and what to do with your career.
Okay, yeah.
Things like that. So those are the sort of, one of my favorite learnings from the last few years is who, not how. Think who can help me with this thing rather than how can I do this thing myself. I'm kind of doing a little bit of both. How, by like reading the materials, animal liberation, and doing it better. And I'll probably watch some of the documentaries as well to see if there's anything that particularly moves me to action. But the who is
and the nice thing, how that's great.
And the nice thing about the sort of the EA bros and the whole altruism community is that like they the more people get into it, the more impact they're going to have, obviously. And so it's like, an organization like 80,000 Hours is just sick because, it's a non-profit that's got like some sick people in it. And they just hop on one-on-one calls, coaching calls with people to just literally help them figure out what to do with their life. This is the sort of shit you normally pay like $5,000 a month for if you get an executive coach or something. These guys are doing it for free because that's the impact that they care about. They want to get more people to switch to or move towards careers that have impact.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in a kind of nice position where lots of people want to help me kind of figure this out. So yeah, it'll be an interesting journey. I'll keep you all updated on the pod.
I love it.
Yeah.
Should we read out a review?
Sure.
Wrap things up. Let's see what the status is on podcast reviews.
Let's see what comments we got on yesterday's pod, last week's. Whoops. Every Monday I check for a new episode of Not Overthinking and it's finally back, says our friend Aman. The banter is quite nice to hear. Please do this more regularly even though you don't have a specific topic, says Anisha. Oh yeah, have you figured out your boundary issue?
My boundary issue?
Yeah, you need to figure that out.
Yeah, have I figured it out anymore? I don't think so. maybe we can explore that next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have one review, which is a 3-star review from Grandmaster Gray in the United States. It's entitled "A Little More Effort Couldn't Hurt." They say, "I love this podcast. I also feel as though a little more effort could go into the planning. I realize this is a side hobby for both hosts, but that's just my opinion. Also, after listening to the last episode, I appreciate Ali trying to get Taimur to be more open. I think their openness is what makes me want to listen over other podcasts. So I appreciate what you guys share. Keep up the great work. I play."
Nice. Thank you, Grandmaster.
Thanks for pushing for this one, by the way. I'd buggered off to North Macedonia and forgotten about it. And then you made this happen.
Yeah. No, it was because Lucia and Evie reminded me yesterday. I was like,
oh, really?
Friday. The podcast supposed to come out on Friday. What the hell?
Is it Friday now?
A day late. It's Saturday today, mate.
No, but does it come out on Fridays now? It used to be like Sundays, right?
Yeah, it comes out on Fridays.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Good stuff. Have a good time with Dougie.
Thanks.
And,
I don't think his name is Dougie, but yeah. I'll have a good time with whoever this chap is. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.